Good afternoon and welcome everyone. We really thank you for joining today's webinar, SAP on SUSE on the Cloud. I'm Kristen Tanner, Global Marketing Strategist for Protera Technologies, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. We appreciate all of you for all of your time out of your busy schedules to attend today's educational session. We hope to answer all of your technical questions for running SAP on SUSE and leveraging a cloud solution. We'll be starting the webinar shortly, but I wanted to go through a few housekeeping notes. Only our presenters' phones are live. Your microphones have been muted by default to block any background noise. Our presenters will be answering questions at the end of the webinar. If you have a question at that time, please type it into the Q&A function on your webinar sidebar. If we don't get to your question during the presentation, I or a member of the Protera team will be sure to follow up with you directly. And lastly, this webinar will be recorded and a link will be made available to all the attendees. Now I would like to introduce today's presenter, Patrick Osterhaus, Chief Technology Officer for Protera Technologies.
Hey, Kristen, thank you for that introduction. And as Kristen mentioned, I'm CTO of Protera, Patrick Osterhaus. And today, I wanted to share with you our agenda. We're going to go through the focus area of running SAP on SUSE in the cloud. And as you can see, we're going to focus upon some of those use cases of great situations and scenarios that you can run the SAP systems on the SUSE operating system in various public and private clouds. We're going to go through some advanced features, including advanced DR, enhanced HA, as well as take a look at what you should consider for your customers moving SAP compute into the cloud. And lastly, we're going to take a look at some customer success stories of companies that have taken advantage of these features from SUSE for their SAP systems on their private and public cloud environments. So before we get started into the details on the SAP systems and running compute in the cloud on SUSE, I wanted to give you a brief overview of Protera and how we got to this point here with being able to speak to these topics today. So Protera started almost 20 years ago in 1998, and we are focused in the SAP space primarily. We will do full ITO support for many applications outside of SAP, yet we always focus our core services around that SAP center for a customer's IT environments. And we deliver these services with a solution and a platform we call it Protera App Care. And what this does is it encompasses the managed services for managing SAP and then taking advantage of the latest cloud technologies and fully managing those. So we can implement, as I mentioned in the agenda, we're going to talk about some of these advanced features for architecture design, for HA and disaster recovery, as well as setting up the best practices and the best ways to manage the SAP environment and these peripheral systems. So this involves having a 24/7 help desk following ITIL processes. And we use those to extend the ITIL procedures and those policies into the monitoring, the change management, and incident management. So we want to ensure that we have a state-of-the-art solution, not only from the technical stack, but also how we provision and provide those solutions and those services for the SAP customers. And also today, we'll talk a little bit about another service that we are providing to help enable customers move compute in the cloud. We call it FlexBridge, and we'll talk about that in detail. Our company is located around the world, as I mentioned. We provide 24/7 follow-the-sun support, and we have offices around the world. Our headquarters are in Chicago, Illinois, in the United States, and then we have offices in Latin America, Europe, and India. I'm happy to say in the last month, we just got our global certification. So we've had certifications from SAP for over 10 years, and now they span over 5 different areas, including hosting and mobile, HANA, application management services. And now we added the global certification, which required us to have an audit going over 3 months for 3 different continents and doing an intensive audit in those respective areas for making sure we can support continuous state-of-the-art services for SAP around the world. So we're happy to announce that we just got that certification. We're going to be making announcements around that shortly. And then differentiators we'll talk about is this idea around cloud brokering, which is now in the press and IT news for the last couple of years. It was something that we've been adopted many, many years ago before that became a term, where we look at the latest technologies and platforms and we figure out how best to provision these services and stay in the latest innovations to provide these to our SAP customers. So we see ourselves as a cloud broker where we can select the best solutions and those innovations to provide those to the SAP systems and the customers to take the benefit of that. So we'll talk about more about how we do this. And also our last key differentiator I would mention is our strategic partnerships, which obviously includes SUSE, and staying ahead of where the SAP technology is going to make sure that we can bring the latest and the best services to our customers. So as I mentioned, this idea of the app care platform is not just the platform, the technology stack, whereas the cloud, it's the abstraction of all these areas to run state-of-the-art IT. So we use as our guide ITIL as the framework that we use to run our best IT management, and that includes the change management, incident management, all of our strategy for rolling out systems and making sure that we have the best policies in place around security. But it also involves looking at how we integrate all of these different areas that companies can now run compute, and includes private data centers, which we've been working with since the 90s, early 90s, where we did implementations and upgrades in customers' data centers. And we still to this day will do migrations from on-premise to on-premise. So that certainly is a big part of customer compute still. And then when we started seeing the emergence of with virtualization and private clouds, we then adopted that and we provided services there. So that involved doing provisioning, building out customer environments into private cloud. And then a few years later, we saw the emergence in the continual growth around public cloud, which includes the cloud providers you see here on the slide here. So we have tight integration with all these partners to provide the best services in the cloud and to provide these services in a hybrid model. So a customer doesn't have to do it all for one, move all their systems at once into the cloud. There's going to be this period of time over many years where there's going to be systems that will be on-premise and maybe they'll always stay on-premise, and then there'll be new systems or systems that are migrating into private and public cloud. So we see this emergence and importance of having a hybrid model and to fully be able to support that and provide services to the end user that are seamless and integrate, and the end user doesn't know where the compute is, or if there's a delay or there's any special processing that has to be done to get the data from one place to the other. So we've been doing this for many years, and the extension of public cloud and private cloud is just another extension of making that environment over different locations work together as one seamlessly. So the app care platform, as it shows in the middle, provides the full stack. So this is the infrastructure, what the cloud providers provide, being fully tied into all their tools and how they do compute and storage, taking advantage of the best performance, as well as any cost savings and how we can optimize spend there. So this involves scheduling systems to go up and down, the elasticity of the cloud, taking advantage of this, making sure that we're running on the best compute instances that are available. Maybe it makes sense for us to sunset a specific type of compute and move it to a faster machine. So we're always taking a look at how we can best optimize the spend and the operations for that customer in the cloud. And then we're going to fully manage all the areas around operating system database, the SAP applications. And as I mentioned, that helped us to make sure and ensure that our services are provided to the expectations of the customer. And lastly on this slide, the focus is not just SAP, but all these other associated systems. So we'll fully manage these other applications. This is just a sampling, but it gives an idea of important enterprise applications where a customer may want to outsource their help desk for these areas, and we will fully manage those from level 1 up to 3. To give an idea about our global presence, as I mentioned, these are our offices located around the world. And then we extend that through our data centers where we actively have compute. So this involves all of our cloud partners. And this list continues to expand with new regions that are coming up with all of our cloud providers. So as we'll see later, our customers are taking full advantage of that, not just for their production environments, but also for DR and disaster recovery of where they can put their compute and best protect it, where you're still respecting data sovereignty, where you have to respect the local laws and regional laws of what the data, where it can be and where it's restricted to be accessed from. Yet we have a lot of flexibility to have geographic distance where we have protection when we build a disaster recovery solution. So we certainly can provide options around the world where the best solution in that system. As I mentioned about the capabilities in our experience around migration specifically, which we'll talk to, this slide talks to the full life cycle of an SAP environment. And first experience around SAP was with very large scale worldwide implementations in the 90s of taking a look at the systems build or design for, the sizing, taking advantage of the best processing that SAP had, and sizing that appropriately for many years, where we had bare metal systems and we're running SAP for that same hardware for many years, so that the sizing was ultra critical. So we were there for the design as we do today, and we will provide that for HANA. And you'll see that with our FlexBridge tool of how we can now automate those services that we spent many years building best practices around. So the design phase is very important. Then we get into deployment, where it's the migration, the implementation, the testing, that life cycle, getting then into the run phase, where this will be our help desk after go live to optimize and do hypercare after go live, making sure all issues are resolved very, very quickly. And then building our best practices around how the best way to run SAP in those other systems. So setting up the routine backup and having monitoring set up for the full stack to see any issues and proactively fix problems before the users see them. So the lifecycle we're very, very familiar with. We've done a lot of migrations, implementations, and very challenging, restrictive areas in defense and in other countries where moving the data was a challenge. So we have a lot of experience in working these tough assignments to make sure that we hit all the deadlines and the migrations are successful. Also want to mention the importance of the cloud providers, of us providing those innovations which continually come even faster, and bringing the best of what the cloud provides and bringing that back to our customers. So the idea here, and we'll see this shortly around the marketplaces for the clouds, around the flexibility of apps and the deployment options. So in the past, where we had to wait possibly months to build a system, where you'd have to get the hardware purchased, and then it would take 3 or 4 weeks for it to arrive, and then it would take another 2 weeks to get it provisioned in the data center, and then it would take another 2 weeks to configure and install the application, and finally you can have a user get into it. Now we can do all that within minutes, where the systems are already built to images, to best practices, fully patched. We can select where we want to provision that application, and within minutes we have that. So it gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility, and we provide that to our customers immediately, where they can build up an SAP environment as soon as they sign the paperwork. And it helps accelerate the prototyping. It helps accelerate any of the development efforts to get into production. So that's been a huge transformative effort around the project management and how we can provision these systems very, very quickly. And then around the scalability, you'll see an example in our case studies around companies that have used the scalability aspect of the cloud, where they don't have to subscribe to their 5-year projection of where compute's going to be. They can look at a 3-month window, or maybe a 6-month, project what they need for the next 6 months. And then when they get to the point where they're getting close to 80% of the compute, they can scale up on a larger instance. And we have many examples of that, which I'll talk to. Around agility is this quick deployment. So we can build not only servers and instances, but we can build an entire environment of, for example, Citrix. We could build a Citrix VDI solution within minutes and have the full farm, many application servers, and the instances to handle all the traffic from the internet can be deployed to best practices through an instance, through an AMI, through a copy of an instance, and have that provisioned to the internet within minutes. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, is within the cloud solutions, the compliance requirements are built into not only the platform, but to all the systems that are going to be provisioned. So we ensure security is considered and fully integrated from the day it's designed. So it's nice. There's a lot of key compliance that each cloud provides that we partner with that ensures that the highest data requirements and security is built into the platform from day one. And with all these 1 through 4, it drives these efficiencies of reducing cost and complexity through utilizing the automation that the cloud provides and these best practices to make sure that we're capturing the efficiency of cost and complexity. This will be the last slide I talk to on Proterra, and this idea is around the managed services we provide around the landscapes. So our services aren't sized or not provisioned by system. We do it by a landscape to simplify. So you can see an example of the sizing, and we call it t-shirt sizing, where you would size it by the SAP's rating, which is basically a rating of how powerful that SAP environment is. And you may have seen a quick sizer before. That report's going to give you the number what your customer environment's going to require to run. And then we size it, and there's a monthly charge for that size of system. And that size is a good indicator of the complexity and the management that's required to run that environment. And within that, it provides all the services I mentioned before. So all the state-of-the-art ITIL-based app care services with help desk and all the monitoring and backups and all the design, all this is built into that solution and that price. And again, that can provision for private, public cloud, as well as hybrid and even on-premise. And the way these models are provided, this is a good slide that this differentiates and discusses, shows how a customer can subscribe to and manage an environment in the cloud. So on the left side, we have an environment where there's essentially three different providers. There's the customer, and they subscribe to infrastructure in the cloud, and then there's a cloud service provider, and that may indeed be the customer themselves. Yet we see in this model, if the cloud provider is not staying in touch with the innovations of the cloud, they're not fully capturing the value in the cost savings and spend optimization they can, as well as all the new enhancements which the cloud providers are quickly innovating around. And we'll have some examples of some of those innovations just in the last few months here. So that certainly is a model that people are adopting. We also have customers that use us just to do the managed services, which is the middle column here, and that is managed services around SAP specifically. So they may do the cloud management themselves, or they may have a third party, and then they still have the cloud provider for infrastructure. The model that we prefer and we see the most success with is where Proterra will fully manage not only the SAP, but the cloud services themselves. So all the infrastructure items for backups, the cost optimization, the sizing, all that is fully managed by Proterra, and you have one group that would fully manage all those systems and all those responsibilities for those systems. So that's certainly our preference, and that's where we've seen the most success with our customers to fully capture value and cost savings. So that summarizes our business line, which we call Proterra App Care, and that's our platform, which I mentioned for these previous slides. And that sets the stage for us to talk now about, with all the experience with doing these implementations and managing systems, many thousands of SAP environments, now we can talk about what we see as the differentiators for running SUSE for SAP in the cloud. So we're going to talk to that next. So as I mentioned, one of the key differentiators about cloud and big benefits is that we can quickly provision the operating system and the system in the cloud. And this is provided today. I'm giving two examples of two web providers, cloud providers, with Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure, where you can quickly go out to each respective marketplace, and within one click, you can quickly provision the very latest version of SLES, which is the SUSE Linux Enterprise software, and you can provision that specifically for SAP. And what's magical about this is this version of SLES provides the magic, what you'll see later around disaster recovery, clustering, high availability, and it has some specific modules that are built for SAP performance in the software. So instead of having to download the software, make sure it's fully patched, we can do one click and tell the cloud provider where we want to build it. So within minutes, you have the best practices built into your operating system for SAP to run HANA or non-HANA systems, and you can do this within minutes. So that's the power of the cloud and the great partnership that SUSE has with these cloud providers to provide their latest software, their best practices, the best value that they built in their software very, very quickly. So very easy way to quickly provision systems from those images. And one key area that we've been focusing on in the last year is since Sapphire, this announcement where SUSE version 12 now provides zero downtime for maintenance for the operating system. And you can see here on the slide all of what it provides. So the enabler here is that it provides us to be able to patch systems every quarter. And in the past, where we have a more extended patching cycle for the operating system, we could get some hesitation from customers to say that we just can't take the system down for an hour, hour and a half. Whereas now with the live kernel patching, this provides a very short window and a requirement for the downtime where there's minimal interruption to the customer. we still many times will restart the SAP system, yet that outage will be just a couple minutes instead of an hour. So that, as you can see here, we can fully provide the security, make sure the system's up to compliance and fully patched whenever those are available. And we can provide that with no downtime. So it's been a very instrumental key enabler for us to make sure the systems are patched and fully secure at all time. And I'll talk to more of these topics here shortly in the presentation. Yet I want to introduce from version 12, SUSE Linux has been building these advanced features built specifically for SAP for many years. And it works especially well with the cloud providers, with the nature and the features that the cloud now provides around geographic separation and even having protection within what they call a region. So you could have a high availability solution built within a region, but they won't even be running in the same data center. So it's a magical idea where we can provide some great design and protect the environments in a way that only a few companies who had tremendous budget for IT in the past could do. Now this is provided for all subscribers for the cloud. And as long as some best practices are followed from SUSE and from SAP, we can provide that in the best protection possible for SAP. So encourage you to take a look at these advanced features, and we'll give a sampling of that in a few moments here in the next section. And what I want to talk to is to talk to some of these advanced features. It's good to look at some of these use cases and where best SAP customers are seeing value running SUSE for SAP in the cloud. And so we can take a look at these existing environments and how they can provision SAP and maybe how they can start. So on the left side, we have the existing customers where many of these customers are looking at doing a migration. So they're starting with their current on-premise systems, or maybe it's already in a private cloud, and they're going to move this to public cloud. So these existing systems are moved over a system at a time, and there's many ways we can do this, which we'll talk to. As well as another way that customers are providing or capturing immediate value is around a hybrid architecture. And that is going to be where you have on-premise paired up with a private or public cloud offering. So we could have a situation where we have the ECC, the core SAP system, connected, well, that core system would be on-premise, and we would connect that to a BI system running on HANA in a cloud, and we would have that directly connected either through a VPN or through a MPLS connection. So we can provide this seamless integration between on-premise and cloud, and you'll see how well this works with a bunch of examples here at the end of the deck. And then we have this idea around disaster recovery, and we think this is the best place to start. If you haven't put any systems in the cloud yet, it's a wonderful place where you can take advantage of the key features of the cloud. You have the elasticity and the way you can quickly provision systems. It's a great fit and a great match for DR. As well as you can talk to the cloud providers have spent, you could say, billions of dollars protecting their environment and building it where it's protected around regions around the world. So in the case of a global, a regional area disaster, it's probably the best place you could have a system protected where you could quickly bring it up somewhere else around the world. And then also this on-demand infrastructure for quickly bringing systems up for proof of concepts and doing upgrades. So anything customer wants to test, they want to prototype a new version of SAP, again, taking advantage of the cloud offerings and those services, we can quickly spin up those systems to test it. So those are the existing customers and all the use cases. And we have those same ones can apply for new customers. So they have a greenfield opportunity where they can build those systems anew and build them into the cloud that they choose. So they have the opportunity to build all the systems there. And the other thing is some cloud providers provide the trial software where they can try the system out with a trial license. So they can kick the tires on the software even before they do a purchase. So very, very nice feature that SAP customers are taking advantage of. We're going to go to more detail on these use cases at the very end. We're going to go through some of the case studies of success that companies have had with running SUSE in the cloud. Yet I wanted to just more extend the idea around where customers have already seen value, and we'll go through more of the ideas here. And we're going to talk to first around the migrations. So we have the HANA migration, which is taking an existing SAP environment, which is on-premise, not only changing the compute to go to cloud, but also changing the platform itself. And we'll see more details on this later. Fitch Ratings has captured not only going to the cloud, but they've gone from ECC running on Oracle and Linux. They've then migrated that Red Hat OS to SUSE in the cloud. So they did a HANA migration, they did an OS migration, they did a cloud migration, and they also upgraded SAP. So within all these digital transformation efforts, they were able to combine this into one, and they moved to cloud to capture these values as you see in the middle here, where they align to the SAP roadmap. They get the performance improvements going to HANA, and they reduce the cloud, the cost of running their operating system and reducing the complexity going to SUSE. And you'll see how they capture that value and how that was done later in the deck here. As well as we have another case study where we're going to talk to moving a full environment. So this is moving SAP as well as non-SAP workloads in the cloud and some options there. We'll talk to more of those a little bit later. And then the ideas here mentioned around the production systems, the non-prod, moving that full environment. We could start first. If a company wants to move non-prods first, we would recommend that for migration. And then the DR system I mentioned to reduce the cost for DR. Many companies who never had DR are now able to do this now with the cloud model. And that's actually been our first introduction of cloud to many of our customers, where we introduce DR, they see the stability and the advantages of the operational advantages, and then they want to move the rest of their environment over. So we'll talk to more of that later in this section. Talking about these enhanced features, we'll briefly cover these. These are really deep topics, and we'll have separate webinars just on this area. Yet, talking about how DR works really well in the cloud, we can talk about these features here specifically. So as I mentioned, the scale up when needed. This is a really cool feature that we're going to see here in the case studies around, they call the pilot light. And what this enables you to do is you have a production environment which is very large. You know, let's say, for example, it's 6 terabytes and it runs with 100 CPUs and it has 200 gigs of RAM, just a large server. What the cloud provides us to do is we can replicate all the data, and we can make sure that it's fully consistent and available at any time, yet we can run it in a server that's a fraction of the size, let's say a tenth the size, because we're not actually running the system fully and having a bunch of users on it. We're just running the maintenance to maintain, running a server to maintain the replication of that system. So whatever is required to make sure that we can keep up with all the changes in that source system, that production system, we're only going to run that. And then when we're going to do a DR test, we are actually going to replicate that system and build a whole test environment. So imagine this is not just one server. This can be a full landscape that we can replicate. We can bring up all the app servers and all the subsequent dependent systems like Active Directory. We can replicate these all when it's needed for a test. And what's amazing, as this icon shows, it's not just one copy. We have customers that will do multiple DR tests, and they'll even use the DR environment for doing non-production tests, or copy of production tests, I should say. So if they're going to do a big support package patching effort, they could do all the testing of that support packages in this non-production copy, which they do in the cloud. So no need to buy additional hardware to do those testing. You can do it all in the cloud and bring it up as needed. And then again, this importance around the geographic protection. So providing that geographic choice that you could certainly, if you're on the East Coast and you have your users there, you could replicate that system that's in the East Coast over to the Midwest, or to the many data centers and those availability zones available in the West Coast. Or you could even go to another country, depending upon the data sovereignty that your company has to follow, what country where you're located. So a lot of options here with the DR and the protection. And then lastly, a key feature here is around this platform as a service, which some cloud providers provide today and others are building out. And this is essentially DR replication built into the cloud itself. So many of these cloud solutions, or the DR solutions, are point solutions built per server. Some cloud providers are going with the perspective of building it into the platform. So you literally would replicate a whole group of servers all at once and you can put them somewhere else. certainly a great idea, a great option to explore here when you're looking at DR. So those are some key features. Now the advantages here, lowering the cost. Obviously, if we can run the DR in a fraction of what required in the past, where you don't have to fully mirror and have a server exactly sized as production, you can certainly lower the cost of it. And then you can perform these non-disruptive DR tests. So this is a great enabler where in the past you would have the DR hardware dedicated for DR. You would do a replication throughout the year, and then once a year you would do a test. So you break that sync and you would test the environment. But during those 2 weeks when you're doing the test, the DR sync no longer works. So if a DR event occurred, you're no longer protected. In a scenario where we can replicate the cloud, we never break that channel of that synchronization. So we're always protected, even no matter how many tests we have running. So it's a great, great feature. Make sure that customers take advantage of. And then again, the resiliency and the redundancy of it, that we have many options around geography as well as all the redundancy built into the clouds themselves. And that goes through the full stack. So through the platform itself, the networking, the design of the data centers, the protection the data centers have with all the security policies and what they follow. It's all built into the solution, so it's wonderful and something that provides much greater value than customers having to build this and be experts on their own in this area. And lastly, it's the heterogeneous solution. So it's not just one operating system that's provided. That's, you know, it provides an option that customers can do. It's many different SAP environments running in many different sizes of compute. So many options there for fulfilling the toughest, most challenging workloads for SAP. So this slide talks to many areas, and we can spend a lot of time just on all these sections. So I'll try to be brief here and accentuate the areas which we see the best value. So if you take a look at the numbering here, you can see within high availability, there is features within the cloud where you can do protection on the hardware level automatically, and this is provided for free. So you can see in the instance of number one, we can provide HA and protect the hardware. And if that first server would go down, this EC2 instance, the second one would automatically resume. So we see some protection. Now, in that case, that's not application consistency. The application would fail and it would have to be restarted, or it could be automatically restarted with a few commands to make sure that happens whenever the server comes up. Yet this is bare bones, basic, free functionality that every customer should take advantage of. So even if you don't have HA in your roadmap, you can enable this and make sure that you're protected. So if you don't have monitoring set up for some reason and you don't know that instance went down, or if you just, this is always going to react faster than a person can because it's going to be coming up within a couple minutes. It's a good thing to set up regardless until you have your HA for production set up the way you want. This option 2, the scenario 2, which you see here, this is taking full advantage of what we mentioned about these advanced features of SUSE. So in this scenario, we're taking advantage of what's called the performance optimized system replication. So this provides us synchronous HANA system replication. So you were going to have this active setup. The magical thing here that's represented in this number 2 is you're going from one availability zone. So this is one data center into another data center in availability zone B. So you're doing HA not just next to each other in the same data center, in the same building. So if that building had a power outage, you're still going to be protected because in the other building, the other data center, you're still replicated and you're still running. And you have the capabilities, what they call a virtual IP, where all the traffic just automatically gets routed to that second system that's always replicated. So it's truly magical. We provide protection not only over that data center, but across a region. And the application consistency is still up. So it's still fully integrity is provided to the customer and no end user impact. So that's a key feature of the SUSE operating system to provide that HA, that advanced feature. Now we'll switch gears here to disaster recovery. So this is the next sections 3, 4, and 5. Now, one of the key features, going back to cloud protection, these features built into the solution, is around how storage is done. And within storage, once you take a backup, which is specifically called a snapshot, that snapshot of that data backup is provided into a second tier of storage. that second tier of storage then is replicated to many data centers. So it provides, again, that protection of getting out of that one data center if there was some intermittent issue that provided an outage to customers. So if the data center was not available, we could still pull those backup files and all the data from the replicated copies to those other data centers. So again, it's not set up automatically. The customer has to enable this, yet it's a very easy feature to enable and take advantage of protection across different data centers. So that's number 3. So instead of doing typical backup, just make sure you're backing up to this type of storage and you're protected beyond just that data center. To extend that idea further, we can take that storage that's in this region. So if you see this box now where the 3 is located, if you look in the upper right, you can see region A. So region A, for example, could be Virginia, where the East region could be located. And we're going to automatically replicate whenever storage is written to this area in Virginia, and then it goes to these other data centers in the East Coast. It's going to automatically replicate to region B up in the upper right corner, and that is going to be in the West Coast. So not only do you have protection over just one data center, that copy is replicated over to the other region across the country. So now you have protection geographically. So truly that is a DR. Now in this scenario, it's a backup. So if a DR event occurred, we would be restoring that data from the storage level. So it's not going to come up within minutes. It'll be an hour RTO, RPO, hours, I should say, to get that system restored and recovered and then getting users back in to use it. But still, again, key point is it's a very low cost solution to provide for all customers as a base solution. And then certainly we would want and encourage customers to look at these enhanced capabilities, which brings into number 5. So number 5 is describing, again, taking advantage of the SUSE operating system, where you can have this enhanced DR setup where it's going to do asynchronous replication. And this could be the Virginia instance is running, and it's fully replicated over to California. This example is showing HANA, yet we can show this same example for non-HANA SAP environments. We could do the same exact setup. And the other thing that's really interesting that SUSE has innovated is using a new type of system replication called cost optimized, where you can replicate your DR production system into a non-production environment. So it's a new area being tested to be released soon. Very exciting because it provides another tier of services for not much more cost for the customer. So exciting areas that SUSE continues to innovate in. So we'll switch gears here and we'll talk about migration to cloud and talk about the efforts of what it takes to move compute there. So our traditional journey is on the top row, we look at a new deployment and what it's going to take to move to cloud. Typically, this would be a new installation, setting up that SAP environment and doing a full implementation. That's certainly an option some companies still explore to today. Our recommendation, and what we see much more traction around, is looking at the existing source and maintaining that data, keeping it, instead of having to do a data migration, selectively picking what you want to migrate, taking that system data and capturing the value that HANA and in-memory computing provides to data mine that, does all the information that customer has stored over the last 2 decades. They've been running SAP R3 and now ECC, and moving this into HANA. So this is going to consider doing migrations for those SAP environments, either through a lift and shift or through an OSDB migration. These have been the 2 paths up to now that have been provided to SAP customers to move to cloud and to do upgrades into HANA. What we're going to explore is a third option here, which we think is the preferred way to do this. So where it starts is we look at that environment, and in the past we would send a resource or 2 out for a couple weeks and learn that customer environment, look at what they're running for SAP, look at the sizing, look at all the versions, and take a look at the system, the database itself, and see what it's going to take to move that data over to the new version of SAP and migrate that to the cloud. So this would be a quite time-intensive process, and for the customer, there are a lot of interviews involved. It would take a lot of time out of their days and their weeks to make sure that we get an accurate assessment of where they're at and what needs to be done. So when we would start to look at this, we would see let's go to HANA and we go to cloud, what would be supported? And so we would look at these roadmaps, and you can see here these 4.6c on the left side is the first version that is supported to go directly to HANA. That system's over 10 years old. I think it's probably closer actually to 15 or 16 years old. So point is that SAP has done a wonderful job to make sure past versions of SAP are fully compatible to go to HANA in the latest version. So you can see this is for R3 and ECC. We have this for the remaining business suite systems, go back to 7.0, which again is over 10 years old. And lastly, the BW system, which we see early adoption of BW, especially around analytics for HANA, that can be upgraded as of 7.0. So we see tremendous opportunity, for SAP customers to be able to capture the value going to HANA on SUSE in the cloud. Big footprint or big net that's cast for what can be migrated. So this introduces this idea, this third option, which we think is better than either the as-is migration or the OSDB migration, and we call this FlexBridge. So I'll talk to this just for a few minutes. So what we've done is we've built a migration platform that streamlines the path to go to HANA and S/4HANA in the cloud. And the way we've done this is we've focused our best practices in putting this that we used to do as a manual process, provisioning systems and sending people out to the customer site. And we built this into a software solution. And with this, we can reduce the project timeline, increasing the quality of the project, as well as a very key part to these migrations is the downtime that the customer experiences. So you're going to see that more in detail here. As I mentioned, it's a software-based solution. So you can see that on the bottom where it says tools. That is accomplished through three pieces. That's the assessment in white, the automation of the SAP migration and upgrade tools, and lastly, our knowledge base, which provides quick resolution for any problems that customers will run into during those migrations. And the way that we provide these, the capabilities where we do this one-step migration is through our best practices, I mentioned, this methodologies. So the key value with FlexBridge is it's one step to do all these transformative efforts. So this is the OSDB migration, which you'll see examples of companies going from Red Hat or Windows to SUSE Linux. They're running now HANA. They go to the SAP latest upgrade on the HANA platform, and they can even do a Unicode conversion, which is required for these newest versions of SAP while moving to cloud. So the transformative idea in here is that you do this all in one step, and there's only one downtime and one testing cycle, which for most companies, a testing cycle of at least 2 weeks is required. So we're talking about a lot of time and cost savings for each one of these steps. So how we do this with this assessment is we have the contents shown within this executive summary of what the migration is going to involve. We're going to take a look at the source system. So we're going to give a report of how any remediation steps that have to be done for the customer environment, if it has to be patched, or if there's any data volume management activities where you can do some archiving to lower the cost of licensing in SAP HANA and then reduce the footprint in the cloud. We certainly will explore all those areas where we can capture cost savings and provide a better solution. So to get this assessment, instead of sending people out to the customer site, what we've done is we've built an automated report where a customer can go to our website, fully register their environment, and then we give them the source code to run on each customer system that's going to be migrated. So it's a very simple to run and execute ABAP program. It's read-only, so there's no data that we're going to change in the system, as well as we only look at the vital information around versions and what software is running on that system. So we're not looking at any financials or any distribution channel information that the customer may have. That information is sent back in a text file to us, and from that, we provide this report within a few days. It's fully automated. We still have experts that will go through and review the solution to make sure that the information is pertinent and is proper for that customer. So in summary, that FlexBridge solution, it reduces the costs, reducing the time, not only for the end-to-end project, but more importantly, or as importantly, that downtime so the end users are not impacted. So we see systems that are as large as 6 terabytes that we can migrate within a weekend. So this solution can work for many sizes of SAP systems, as well as the different types, for ECC or CRM SRM. Through the best practices and doing this so many times, we've reduced the risk because we're following these same procedures, as well as complexities reduced because of this. And lastly, and I didn't show this, but it improves visibility that we can do automatic notifications to the customer and their project managers to see where they're at in the process. Case study on FlexBridge is a company that we migrated a couple years ago. Before they used FlexBridge, they did a migration previous to FlexBridge, and the migration time was 3 days, and we got that down to 3 hours, minimizing that. And they went from Oracle Windows running in a host environment over to HANA, running the latest version of SAP was SLES version 12. So encourage you to get the free assessment going out to our website. So we'll go through some of the success stories that we have, many success stories running SUSE on the cloud. Again, these are the use cases, so we'll go through each one of these here in a little more detail. So we'll start with an all-in SAP Dev Environment, Dev Quality Production. This one was all the above, HANA migrations, OS migrations, and cloud initiatives using FlexBridge. We have Tate & Lyle, and they're running SAP HANA on SUSE in Azure. So they're going through their dev quality, they're doing production very shortly, and they have many cloud initiatives to move compute into the Azure cloud. So we see a lot of value being captured from the cloud computing, moving from on-premise into the cloud. We also have Pacific Drilling, which has HANA. They moved from an on-premise environment, again, HANA, SUSE, AWS, and they take advantage of our managed hosting and AMS application services that Protera AppCare. They just went live very recently, about a month ago, so providing, again, the value of the cloud to them. We have a hybrid architecture example, and this one's an interesting one because it's on-premise ECC, and they're running BobJ on HANA in AWS, again on SUSE. You'll see this, there's a case study provided the architecture here. You can see it's a pretty complicated infrastructure. This is just production, where they have a DMZ, which segregates the data from the internet, and then that's only a certain amount of traffic and ports are enabled to go to those production environments in the productive VLAN in that network. We also have Green Skies, which is a interesting company, a solar company out in the East Coast. They also have BobJ running on HANA in a hybrid model where they have ECC on-premise. And again, SUSE running on HANA. We have many examples we included here too of proof of concepts. These are demo and internal systems. So we have ERP Sim. This is by Baton. This is a very interesting solution they built where they provide training for HANA. So you can actually simulate, if a company is looking for HANA and want to see the value of what it provides to a company, they actually do a simulation. It becomes a game, and they can have teams of executives of a company play against each other to see who can have the most successful company using the analytics of HANA. So what they provide is a way to quickly copy an environment and build this for a test environment. So they do this whenever they need a test environment built for a new challenge. They can build this environment very, very quickly by copying their image. And also we have our trusted partner, Dickinson Associates, which we've done many implementation. They've had their internal systems, which they run in SAP themselves to manage their business. That's running on HANA and SUSE in AWS. And we also have Fitch Ratings, which I mentioned at the beginning of the call. They're using FlexBridge to do the migration. So they have HANA, the SAP upgrade, and the cloud migration all in one. And they're doing this for Business Suite, for ERP, for Business Objects, and Solution Manager. So been very successful with their upgrade. And soon to be, we're architecting right now their HANDR on SUSE. So this will be new functionality that we're building for them for their production migration, which will be done in June. So we'll have the HANDR solution coming very shortly. And with that, we'll get to the Q&A section. I know we're tight on time, but I know we had a couple questions come up before, so I want to make sure we tend to at least those two questions, but feel free to add any more that came up new. But these two came in during the call here, I see, so I'll go with those first. So the first question is, to go to cloud, to migrate, what operating systems, what types of systems can be supported to go to SLES today? So the quick answer there is, we can migrate anything that's supported for HANA. We can migrate to / running HANA, or even non-HANA for that matter, in the cloud providers. So there is a supported requirements by SAP of what operating systems and what databases are supported. But for HANA, that list is very wide, and it includes AS400 as well as the mainframe OS390, as well as all Unix platforms, and then obviously x86. So the wide, it's a wide selection of operating systems that can be converted and migrated over to cloud running /. So that's certainly a big capability of what you can run, what you can migrate over. And then the other question comes in around the migration requirements around the network and what's required there. So in short, to start with, to do prototypes, a VPN connection, you certainly want to make sure it's dedicated and it's private. That's actually a requirement by the cloud providers, so you don't have this open to the internet, and you have ports open where people can go in these systems. So there's requirements for each cloud provider to run SAP productively, especially, you have to follow. So that goes without saying. But for demo systems, it's okay to do a VPN connection. When we start looking at moving production in those environments, we would recommend to do a dedicated connection. And that's not only for the migrations and for testing and making sure our downtime estimates are proper, yet you're going to want to have a dedicated network connection to that cloud provider, because this is going to become your data center. So you want to have some SLA attached by a vendor that you can you feel confidence that you're getting the best service in ensuring quality for your customer. So that's recommended. VPN to start for proof of concepts and testing, but when you start looking at moving productive workloads, make sure you get a dedicated connection with an SLA. And those are all the questions that came in so far. So I know we're tight on time, so maybe we can stop there for today. As Krista mentioned, this will be recorded, so feel free to watch any parts over or reach out to us with any additional questions. We're very, very happy to answer those for you, and you know where to reach us.
Sounds great. Thanks, Patrick. And one last note too, be sure for anyone attending Sapphire, we'll actually be at Protera booth 477 and the SUSE booth 559. So be sure to stop by there and we can talk in person. Thanks again, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day, everyone.